Thanks, Neil. I'm probably going to build this actually on what Joe's already said, but probably with a bit more of a lens on transformation and continuous improvement. And I think during this last year, we have seen so many new ways of working in response to COVID, and that's hardly surprising because crises often and usually necessitate transformation. So we've seen things like working and teaching from home. Anyone who's been for the COVID jab will have seen the legions of volunteers that people have managed to get together at vaccine rollout centres, which is quite unbelievable. We've seen different ways of enacting with customers and even different ways to stay fit. I've been doing my Joe every day, you know, to try and keep the fitness levels up. So nothing this year has been normal at all. And these experimental, almost disruptive ways of working have undoubtedly enabled organisations to function within COVID constraints and demands. We've seen loads of decisions made at pace, and that necessitates a rapid collection and assimilation of data. And one of our nominees for our annual awards this year has submitted a case around data collection during COVID. And they actually used the opportunity to overcome historic issues around the availability of data. And it was so successful that they've already adopted it as the new approach that they're going to take forward. So we've seen a lot of change. We've seen other examples where the control engines of entire organisations have reformed to ensure stability of critical operations. And on one of our previous podcasts, we heard a really inspirational story about an astounding piece of work to get homeless people off the streets. So quite remarkable changes have been taking place, and they are transformational without a doubt. But what I'm now starting to hear from all over the place is that some organisations are tempted to see these successes as a signal that once organisations are out of COVID, further transformation can and will be generated just as swiftly and rapidly, you know, to the same extent as we're seeing it now. I think some of this will be driven by political agendas, particularly the position the country's in at the moment. So we're facing the need to repay an unparalleled level of borrowings. And this is going to mean we have challenges to face around the range and the depth of public services we provide, and also who we provide them to. And I think it's going to be far easier for policymakers to visualise and articulate what we need to achieve such significant goals through transformation, rather than talking about incremental continuous improvement to achieve them. So political drivers, I think, are undoubtedly going to come into play in terms of the types of change that are being introduced and the pace of them. I think there's another group of people who've seen transformative change happen at pace and are suddenly thinking that that could be a viable alternative to other approaches to change, which may have previously failed to deliver the same level of benefits so quickly. And we've seen that in quite a lot of organisations who've tried to introduce various types of change programs, Lean, Six Sigma, etc., and they've failed because they haven't taken the right approach and they haven't thought about changing the culture. But I think, to me, at this particular point in time, the big question is whether the transformational changes that we've seen to date are sustainable long term, and if transformation as the go-to approach is sustainable as well. Because transformation is very demanding, financially, mentally, and physically. It's wearing, and I think a lot of us are starting to feel the physical and mental impact of such intense ways of working through these last few months. As we've heard already from Joe, people are getting very Zoom weary. They're starting to condense meetings, they're starting to look at different ways of delivering longer sessions and workshop sessions and making them into bite-sized chunks so that they're more digestible to people. They're starting to say that they relish the idea of getting back to work, and I never thought I'd hear people say that, to get back to a well-paced and predictable way of working, to see their colleagues again, and to separate their home and work life. So a lot of challenges coming up. And again, another organisation who's put in for our awards this year has undertaken a piece of research into home working during the pandemic. And they found out that on the one hand, they've seen a huge increase in efficiency of people working from home, but on the other, their employees are suffering the reduced social interaction that their employees are having is leading to almost a social isolation problem, and causing an impact on their job satisfaction. So a very, very mixed blessing, really, in terms of the innovations and transformations in ways of working that we've been witnessing. So I think we're now at a stage where leaders could be tempted to push forward with transformational change, but I think they'd be very foolhardy just to rush in. And we all know, looking back, that there are numerous examples of transformative initiatives in the public sector that have gone badly wrong. Too much has been done too fast and based on too little facts. And many of these have been driven by opportunities presented by things like new technology, where people have got very excited by the possibility of technology, and they've implemented things and they've turned out to be very badly ill-conceived, and they've consumed a lot of time and money in the process. And in industry, I mean, plastic, diesel engines, they were once thought of as transformative, but we don't think that now because we're better informed. I think another risk factor in moving too fast with everything is because as a result of COVID, the entire operating environment has changed beyond belief. So our customers probably don't want the same things from us in the same way anymore. Whether they will do longer term or not, we just don't know. So before leaders do anything drastic at this time, or just say that they're going to adopt a transformative approach to change from this point on, I hope that they sit back and address the big questions. You know, do our customers want the same services in the same way? What are the tangible benefits, or almost quantifying the benefits of these new ways of working? And can employees work at the pace required without impacting their health, and without them being in a place where they may well make errors of judgment because of the sheer scale of change? And I think an important factor also is, can the culture support such a dramatic pace of change? And is transformation affordable? Another question. So with all these changes happening within the space of a year, I don't believe there has been any time to give the changes we've seen any meaningful level of scrutiny. And I think any action must be based on an informed understanding of the impact on the business, the services, service users, and also of the employees. Now, I don't think any of us can now forget hands, face, space, but for leaders considering transformative change at this stage, I've come up with a bit of a new mantra for them, which is space, brace, pace. So space is making time to evaluate properly. They need to really understand what these changes mean, not just short-term benefits, but long-term. Brace, that's to ensure continuation of service and the well-being of employees if they are going to adopt these measures long-term. And pace, the speed of any change they may wish to introduce, especially on the back of a year that has been so challenging for everybody. But let's not just focus on transformation. I mean, I represent continuous improvement. That's what I champion. And continuous improvement has got a role to play in all of this. It's culturally driven. It's type of change where every employee strives to do things better. It's lots of small changes that will ultimately deliver financial benefits and better services and better ways of working. The only difference is that they're not going to manifest in one big bang as a transformation initiative would. But if employees are focused correctly, they will definitely move everybody towards the end goal. So if you take climate change, for example, with climate change happening at such pace, big, bold transformation is essential, but the step changes, the continuous improvements required is required, because without that, and without everybody adjusting slightly how they approach climate change and contribute to it, we'll never achieve in the big goal. So CI is an essential bedfellow for transformation. And I've got no doubt that the events of the last year have opened leaders' eyes to the potentials of all types of change. But in terms of leadership, they need to take a balanced and holistic approach and think about how different types of change can support the achievements of the goals, and not just jump for transformation. And they need to think of the needs of all those involved in the change. I personally think that a lot of leaders and managers will need to develop new skills. They almost need to be visionaries who can set the goals for the future and visualize how to get there through transformation. They need to understand what needs to be changed here and now through smaller step change, and they need to adapt management approaches to flex to evolving demands and empower workers to drive bottom-up change. And that's going to necessitate leaders and managers accepting different levels of risk, as Jo just discussed, and also looking at changes in how workers are held to account. So it's going to be a whole different world for a lot of people. Above all, I think leaders are going to need to be adaptable and brave. Their organisation, people and communication skills are going to be critical if they're going to succeed. Now, all those leadership qualities, so to speak, have been hallmarks of leaders of successful businesses for years. But now I think in this type of environment, and if we're looking to do things differently, they need to become the norm rather than the exception. So yes, change presents a huge opportunity. It also presents a huge risk. Let's look to transformative change, where structures, maybe cultures and processes are no longer suited to current or future needs, or if there's a financially driven imperative. But let's lose sight of the fact that succeeding with transformational change is more than just altering the way things done. I think I read recently a Swiss study of the Swiss political system during COVID, and that concluded that newly adopted systems within government clearly showed attributes of transformation, but they may not result in actual transformation because success would depend on a number of factors, including political will, societal preferences, power relations, and financial resources. And I think those findings are something that we all need to take on board and can learn from.